so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness, which creates and animates all things. Now, of course, understanding this powerful truth is one thing. Applying this incredibly empowering wisdom to everyday life, well, that's another, which is exactly why we provide you with a fresh serving of soul food for thought 5 days a week to help constantly remind you of what matters most. You are it. And I'm your host, Brandon Beecham. I'm the reflection and extension of you who will be here each Wednesday interviewing a different consciousness changemaker. And on the other 4 weekdays, leading the way to ensure that your perspective is consistently expanded, your vibration is constantly elevated, and your heart is overflowing and full. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about a few sponsors that not only help to make it possible to produce this show 5 days a week, but that I'm also genuinely passionate about promoting, especially since they're helping to fund all the cool projects we have in the works, such as the Positive Head app, the docuseries that I'm intending to begin shooting within the next year, and whatever else we dream up over here at Positive Headquarters to help spread consciousness across the planet. Now, if you're short on time or just super excited for today's topic and want to dive right in and skip these ads, feel free to fast forward about
4 minutes
to get right into today's show. That being said, I strongly encourage you to listen because the reason I'm passionate about my sponsors is because they've made a huge impact in my own life, which is why I've aligned with these organizations. And I firmly believe they can do the same for you too. The first longtime stellar supporter of the show that I want to mention is Gaia. If you're not familiar, Gaia is the go-to source for streaming consciousness content online with over 8,000 video titles. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. The second sponsor I'm extremely passionate about promoting is Purium. It's no mystery that bringing your mind, body, and spirit into balance is necessary if a person truly intends to manifest the greatest and greatest version of themselves. And as of recording this, it's been about 4 months since I started taking the Purium Core 4 superfood products every day. And I can honestly and sincerely say my mind, body, and spirit have never felt more in alignment. If you've been looking for a way to easily get superfoods into your system every day with a simple plan that can help you reestablish a healthier foundation and relationship with food, I cannot recommend for you to start with the Purium 40-Day Ultimate Nutrition Plan, which includes a 10-day metabolic reset and cleanse enough. I spent personally months researching Purium before I jumped in, and now myself and over 150 other positive heads have started with the 40-Day Ultimate Nutrition Plan, and many of us have continued taking the Core 4 products on an ongoing basis daily ever since. I personally intend to take them for the rest of my life because they played a huge role transforming my vibrational state. If you decide to do it, it'll cost you just over $7 a day for the first 40 days and only about $5 a day after. But if you do it the way that I recommend you to do it, the smartest and most beneficial way, it won't cost you anything. I recommend you to just look at where you can reallocate money you are already spending on food each day. Essentially, you're just going to swap out the unhealthiest stuff you're in the habit of purchasing in exchange for Purium superfoods. And this way, it costs you nothing to participate in the transformation and cleanse. And it creates exponential benefit because now you've replaced something that lowers your vibration with something that is going to make you feel super high in the healthiest kind of way. Just take a few minutes, see where you can cut out $5 to $7 a day and commit to doing it. It's that simple. Also, for support, we'll be doing a big group transformation with other positive heads and soul family once each month for support. So I recommend, going right now, ordering your 40-day Ultimate Nutrition Plan bundle so that you have it when the next group transformation starts. Procrastination is not your friend. Order it now. You can thank me later, because I can assure you, you will not be sorry you've decided to send a message to the universe that you're ready to step up your vibrational game and reclaim your health sovereignty. Just head over to ishoppurium.com. That's spelled ISHOPPURIUM.com. Be sure to use the code POSITIVEHEAD, all one word, for either $50 off or a 25% discount, whichever is greater. And also, if you want to learn more details about the Purium products, why I'm so passionate about promoting them beforehand, you can go check out several videos I shot discussing these things in greater detail. You can also hear my interview with the very inspiring founder, David Sandoval. Much, much more over at positivehead.com/transformation. All right, all you positive heads, welcome to the show. We are back again, and I am not flying solo today. I'm happy to report I have my dear friend, brother from another mother, Christopher David Jackson, here with me to help steer the ship. Hello, Chris. How are you, buddy?
Brandini. Amazing. Thank you, bro. Always such a gift and an honor to connect with you.
Likewise. It's been a minute. We were regular there for a long while, and now it's been a minute. So absence truly makes the heart grow fonder, as they say, which is actually a perfect thing to lead into what we're going to talk about today, because, a lot of times everyone out there listening, when I have a guest on, I like to defer as much to them as possible. Just like my powwows, my interview style, it's like I try and make it about them as much as possible. Well, when I have a co-host, most of the time it's like, all right, here you're with me. What are you feeling called to talk about? And I always know, Chris, you'll have something, epic up your sleeve. And one of the first things you mentioned was discussing the idea of becoming a Heartist, and you had me at Heartist. So let's dive into
all
that.
Of our life a work of heart.
I love that. So good. The plays on words are too good. Man, tell me, what does that mean? What, to make our lives a work of heart? What does it mean to become a Heartist to you?
Well, thank you, Brandon. As we've talked a lot about, this kind of new mega modality that's been coming through for me called wonderfulness. It kind of all links into that, and it's this notion of, when we're centered in our heart, and being one with everything in the wonderfulness of life, then, I think we find our greatest fulfillment really when we're living in creative expression, when we're aligned with that creative expression, right? Mm-hmm. And when we are, there's like this magical thing that happens where it's like we just feel in flow. And everything's coming out of us. It's kind of like, I know you've shared with me a lot of Abraham. Mm-hmm. And they talk about like being the vortex. Yeah. And what I've found is it's very much aligned with, and I still haven't listened that much to Abraham. But when I do, or the stuff that you shared with me, it's like, oh wow, this is like right up the same alley.
So good. Yeah. Definitely one of my favorites.
And inside of that, I was just like, oh, becoming the vortex. It's the same thing. When you're centered in your heart, you become that, you align with the heart of the fucking universe. Pardon my language.
Right. Apologies. Right.
And when we do that, you find that you become that vortex.
Right.
And everything kind of like aligns with you, tunes to us.
Yeah. Right.
And then when that's happening, it's like, I like to also use landmark language a little bit here, because it's transformational education. They have this wonderful, work with distinctions and language.
Right.
And so, in alignment with the whole vortex thing, it's also realizing that we're a clearing. In Landmark, they talk about becoming a clearing for people and for yourself. And, you know, you may be like, well, what does that mean, a clearing?
I was about to say, what does that mean? You read my thought.
And
does it have to do with telepathy?
Yeah, really what it means is getting all of the shit out of the way so that our truest, most divine essence can bubble through.
Right.
And when we become that clearing or that vortex for other people, you know, it becomes a force, almost like a vacuum, right? That pulls the purest, most divine essence through with us and clears out all of the lesser shit, the denser, you know, heavy stuff inside of our fields, and just has us experiencing, you know, being lighter without it.
Right.
Found. Because life becomes lighter to us.
Enlightenment.
Yeah, and
Lightening
that's funny. Yeah, that's so true. I hadn't even thought of that. But yeah, enlightenment, not in the sense of being filled with light, but, you know, going to the other side of that word, which is just being lighter.
Yep.
And I haven't even really considered the play on the word there, but it's funny when you think about it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've definitely pinged on that one many times. That's a perfect one for you. I know how much you love the double meanings and plays on words. And yeah, I mean, it's so true. It's like one of my favorite quotes that I talk about is, you know, one of the only quotes from the Bible that I almost say almost every episode. It's like, lest you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And that is, what does that mean? Well, you're becoming childlike. What are you doing? You're lightening up. That's enlightenment. That's like you're living in your heart. You know, and that's such a powerful, powerful realization. And, you know, I also hear, Chris, people all the time talk about what, you know, their level of creativity. Oh, if I could, I wish I was musically inclined, or I could paint like that. And here's the thing, we're all creators because that's what source is, our higher self. It is we're the creator and created rolled in one.
That's what these bodies are, essentially. So, like, we're fountains. We are literally conduits to source consciousness, or the unmanifest making itself manifest into the gift of the present moment through our physical bodies. Right. That's Heartistry right there. I mean, you are the artist behind it all. Your life is, if you ever think you're not creative, you know, first off, get in your heart more and watch more of it unfold. Second, you know, if you don't think you're creative, look around, because you created everything. You created everything that you see. You created your life. You created, you know, your life is a living piece of art, right? So I think some people might still feel a little bit disconnected from that, you know, and be like, well, how am I creating, you know, this present moment? And I think really to put it into another perspective where, like, because even I, you know, it raises my skeptic meter when you say that. And I'm like, oh, well, another way to look at it is just that you know, if you don't want to say that you're actually creating what's outside of you, like materially, you could look at it from the perspective of you are creating your interpretation of it. Right. You know, and this is where we've talked about her story and his story before, I think. Right. Yeah, I forget sometimes what the stuff that we've covered on here.
Me too. I forget what I say, when, where, or how. And luckily, it's very, very helpful and useful to circle the same things over and over, I find in my own life. So it's like, you're going to hear me repeat myself, and that's a good thing. So,
yeah. So then just jumping back to this for a moment, it's, you know, when we look at, like, all of reality can really be separated into two aspects. You know, one being matter like the material, like physical things that we can touch and feel. And then the aether or etheric. And, those are like things that we can't necessarily feel, but we can, right? Like thoughts or ideas. And so this, matter ends up being mother and aether ends up being father, right? Those two words are also connected. And so what I like to say is that mother, her story is matter of fact. It happens.
Right.
I stepped into the street and, this ball hit me in the face. That's her story. The matter of fact, right? And then his story would be the interpretation of that as, this person was disrespectful and diminishing me and abusive.
Right. By throwing the ball at my face.
Right. And so, what happened, the matter of fact, and her story is I got hit in the face with a ball when I stepped out into the street. And then his story around it is creating all of this container for that. Right. And context to it. Like, this person was disrespectful. I was abused. I was not considered. All of those things that then give me
the interpretation of the facts, right?
Right. And then, and also guides how I'm going to experience that.
Absolutely. It's everything. What you're left with comes from that.
Totally. And then this circles back to, again, when we're talking about, being a heartist, it's like being at the center of what's going on rather than at the effect of it.
Right.
Right. And, so it's, am I the creator of my reality or am I the experiencer? And, I think many of us, will listen to that and say, well, I first align with that I'm the experiencer, right?
Right.
Definitely experiencing it. And I think that's the first dynamic truly to life, is that the human experience really is
funny because that's who's I got to just interject because we didn't talk about, usually we talk about what song to play at the end, and I just queued up randomly a human experience song like
no.
So yes,
so
there's a synchronicity. Yeah, the human experience unharnessed is the song I'm going to play at the end. So
that's amazeballs right there.
It is. It always is amazing. Every time it gets me.
Synchronicities.
Indeed.
Wow. Well, David is a great friend.
Yeah, he's super cool. He's super cool.
And so, I often like to break everything down into very simple terms for us to kind of connect with things from a matter of fact perspective. And part of that, for me is to say that we are reality interpreters, like experiencers and interpreters first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the next stage to that is we then are creators, reality creators. And the way that works is we create reality then from the space of our experience. And I know this is maybe getting a little bit dense right now.
Well, it's almost like no, it's good though. I mean, to unpack it, it's like, it's almost the opposite of how a lot of people are approaching it. Because what you're saying is, if once you've determined the experience and told the story about it, it actually, it's a co-creative interpretation that sort of leads to what sort of experience that you have next that's going to match, because it all happens, we have this whole domino effect thing going on, law of attraction, law of emergence, whatever you want to call it. So, by it's so important.
Yeah.
It's so important how you're telling that story, because it's like the kindling for the next creative spark of what you create that is, a reflection of that. And so, that's instantly what I get from it.
If you just shot to like a kind of parallel, kind of expression of reality, like you close your eyes and you picture that every single human being on this planet is like a fountain. And they're a fountain, on each side of that fountain, one, you have the unmanifest, and then the other, you have the manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so the manifest would be what we tend to call reality. And then the unmanifest, we would tend to call fantasy. Right?
Right.
And now in this sense, the funny thing is that from a mental perspective, there is almost no distinction between those two realms.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like the power of positive visualization. They say that, like, if you close your eyes and you imagine yourself, shooting a basket as an example.
Yep.
You're actually, your brain is having experience of doing that. Like, you can practice to become masterful in sports or anything,
in
just
your
by
head.
doing it in your mind. Yeah.
Yep.
That's profound, right?
Yeah, that's exactly how my grandfather and father were both like state champion skeet shooters. And that's exactly what my grandfather talked about doing. He didn't, and he was not into any of this, but he realized and figured it out on his own, that if he imagined seeing the clay pigeon exploding before he pulled the trigger, that led to, him shooting well enough that he won championships, right?
Yeah, and this kind of all leads back to the vortex again as well. Like, you focus on a certain point, right? And your focus into that point almost takes your energy like a laser beam and propels you and that fountain force or flow, whatever you want to call it, moving in that direction.
Right.
And then sucking everything around you into that flow as well.
Right.
So this is where we see that we're actually like, and the whole thing of like being a clearing or being a vortex is we basically draw everything around us into that flow of our focus and our attention.
Right.
Now this gets even more profound, because when you start to think then about your beliefs, and again, we get back into, being a wordgician here, but in this case, I don't even know that that's the case. It's more just actually breaking down the language. Like, you look at the word belief, right? And there's a lie inside of it.
Mm-hmm.
BELIE F. So what I like to say is that any belief is basically just being a lie. Because the truth is that any interpretation that you make about reality, like any history or his story that you create around the matter of fact or her story, is essentially a lie. Right. It's not the whole truth. It's one perspective of the truth. It's relative to the choice that you have of experiencing it that way. It's like, I could say I got hit in the face, right? That tends to be more matter of fact and connected to reality than if I say I was abused and I was disrespected and all of that stuff, right?
And I could say, and then I could have the experience and say, wow, I really enjoyed the sensation of one of these balls being hit. It's like think of the ones in a pool that's really light and airy, and it's so fun for me when someone throws that at me and I can bounce it off my head. Okay, well, there's a totally different story than I've been disrespected and am angry over it.
Yeah, and what's funny is that your focus in that moment of whatever you choose to, whichever lie you choose to be in your belief, you will literally steer the outcome of that occurrence into whether it becomes, the story of you being disrespected and abused, or the story of, oh, this person's playing a game with me.
Yep.
It's a great opportunity to be playful.
Yeah.
Right? Like, even if you had, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. You can finish, and then I'll jump in.
I was going to say, even if, let's say you had the intention by, throwing a ball at my head to be mean or disrespectful, but then I contextualize it instead as like, oh, you're playing with me.
Yep.
If I start engaging with you on the level of, oh, you're playing with me,
it totally tweaks them out. Yeah, it changes everything.
And it will probably pull you into that vortex. Yep.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's exactly the type of thing I was going to say. It's fascinating when you start seeing that how neutral everything and everyone is, and we can think back on our lives to someone who has
even
been
when their intention isn't. Yeah.
We can think back into our lives when someone has been your greatest, advocate, your greatest supporter, and then they turned into the adversary and the villain. It's like it's all neutral. It's like
or vice
you
versa.
are.
You can turn any villain into your greatest, or your greatest adversary. You can turn into your greatest ally or friend.
And when you're coming at it through a heart-centered approach, this is what really ties it back to the Heartist for me. When you can say, okay, I'm going to take this thing, this event, this situation, this circumstance, and I'm going to run it through the heart, right? I'm going to wash it through my heart instead of this my mind so much, or even some angry perspective or any of those things. I'm going to take it and flush it through my heart. And that is truly becoming a Heartist, and there's so much power and influence in that. You literally start transforming how not only the story now feels and sits and resonates with you vibrationally, but how then the characters that are connected to that story start showing up. They're completely influenced by it on all kinds of levels that no one can see or even fully understands.
Yeah, and I like to also think of it this way, in the sense that whenever you do that, you are bringing things to their most authentic, or in fact, even greater than that, you're bringing things to their most heart-authentic place. And when we do that, like, there is no greater truth, from my experience, than the realization that who and what we are is pure love.
Right.
Even if our intention in that moment is not seeming to, be aligned with that, it actually is. Because even if I'm wanting to hurt you or angry with you, the only reason that I experience anger that I've ever known is because the pure love and wonderfulness that I am is not being seen, heard, addressed, or I'm feeling repressed. In having reflected back to me the pure love and wonderfulness that I am.
Right.
So I get angry with you. Like, if, you do something and I feel hurt by that, it tends to be like, if I feel like you're diminishing me or disrespecting me or any of that, it's, that you're not respecting the pure love and wonderfulness that I am.
Right.
The greatness, and I believe that we actually all have that. And bringing this to a whole other level is and this is something I think that everybody can get into, whether they're spiritual, scientific, atheist, religious, is this notion that we actually are all one. Whether you believe that we were created by, this divine creator, God, or whether you believe that, we came from this big bang where everything was once collapsed, the entire observable universe was collapsed into the space of the head of a pin or a needle, right? That still says that everything is one. And you can actually draw a circle around the whole universe and say, oh, well, it's all one. And so then there's this deep intrinsic knowing inside of us that we are one.
Yeah.
Right? Found inalienable truth. And then we talk about even just how reality is basically this web of interdependence, in the sense that whatever you are doing or experiencing is going to have an impact on me. because we
Right.
live in the same world.
Right.
So like if you have an experience and that experience catalyzes you or causes you into being positive head, then you are going to steer the trajectory for reality in a more positive direction.
Yeah.
Which I am included in.
Right.
And
Everyone is contributing.
Yeah. And if you're having a negative experience or what you perceive as a negative experience, then you will steer the direction of reality through you into that.
Right.
And then I will feel drawn into that negative direction. Right.
Right. Right. You're gonna show up as the mirror, as the reflection of the vibrational offering that the person is approaching you as. They literally creating you. We're creating each other with our perceptions.
So what I like to think of it really as that, all of us as individual vessels, or however you want to look at it, are basically like these fountains. These fountains that filter and take in reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they filter again the flow out of the reality that we create.
Right.
And so the quality of our consciousness or the ideas that we're holding on to becomes the lens or the filter through which all of that occurs, right?
Yep.
And then that creates the quality of the experience for ourselves and others. And this is where we talk about, like, we are literally the cross section between the past and the future.
Yep.
And when you think about that, where the past and the future meet is the present moment, right?
The gift
that we are the present moment. We are the cross section between the past and the future. And so whichever place we focus our attention becomes, wherever that attention is focused, is where the flow of energy pours into.
It's like infinite lenses that you're putting on reality. And if you're putting it through that filter of your heart, that is the highest filter. Putting it through the filter of love.
I want another way of saying that. I just said it. I apologize, Brandon. I know, like, what you're saying is accurate. At the same time, I feel like it can be misleading when we say highest, because in a sense, I would say that while I get what you're saying as highest, it's also not about high or low. It's about more the center point of everything. Right? Because it's like, I can remember. Yeah, the heart is in the middle of the body,
right? Not
the top or the bottom,
right?
Not the left or the right. And so, and it's funny, so much of our language even is always kind of is based in duality, top or bottom, right?
Yeah,
left or right. Well, it's
I like to think about most expanded, as whenever I catch that, and I agree with what you're saying. It's like, because it's all valid experience and it all serves the whole. Right. Any perspective is ultimately feeding back information to source to give it its vantage point, and so therefore it's all necessary and equally important. The most expanded perspective, where you're seeing the full chessboard, not just zoomed in on one square. It's like love becomes like the center point. It becomes the filter, and then you're creating. You're creating from through and experiencing through a filter that's actually extremely enjoyable way to experience reality out of the myriad ways that you could experience it. And then you get playful with it. Then you start, Charles Clay, our mutual friend who was on a few months ago. He talked about, a great idea that comes to me that he talked about that's Heartistry is like going into the coffee shop and, telling the barista that you love them without saying a word, and seeing how that energy is received and felt. And, I can think back to interacting with him, and just even the look in his eyes, he's emanating that all the time to people. He's sitting in like, you say you're not creative. That's a very creative way to play with your reality right there. That's heartistry. And you can start, moving. The more you move into this heart-centered lens perspective, the more joyous everything becomes.
Yeah, totally. And I love that.
I do too. It's a fun affair to approach life from this perspective. And now you start moving out of the head and all the mental chatter and being led on wild goose chase and just into a state of like
something that
living center. No, go ahead, finish.
Something that just came through. Wow, this is beautiful, Brandon.
I'm ready. We're ready.
Okay. So you can call this theory or whatever, but this is what's coming through, is that God essentially is the heart. And angels are the head. Literally the angles, the infrastructure or structures that we create. God is the heart. Angels are the head, right, of the top half of the body. And then demons are the lower half.
Interesting.
Yeah. And the funny thing is they all come from the heart, right? The angels and the demons come from God.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right.
And at the same time, like, so God creates everything. Right. And apologies for getting into kind of like a religious context around all of this. I'm just doing that to kind of align it, because whether you're religious or not, you can actually look at this. We can move completely out of religion and just go into frequency. The angels are the highest frequency.
Right.
That all comes out of the middle point, which is like the nothing. Right. And then you have the lowest frequency, which is the denser vibrations. Like matter is low frequency, dense, and then aether, fire and air is like higher frequency, lighter. Mm-hmm. Right. And then in the center point, then you put all of this actually lays perfectly over our own bodies. Right. And the heart, when you think about it, creates everything.
Yep.
And it empowers everything. And it holds on to nothing. And it judges nothing. If your heart were to judge a certain part of your body and not give love or light or life to it, the whole body dies.
Yep.
Right?
Very true. And if we can
and that's what we experience in our world, is all of the things that we devalue. We then suffer the consequence of that devaluation being reflected back to us. In a way, like one of the things I love to play with in this is just looking at like how we devalue our shit. Right? And our waste, like all waste. We devalue our waste. Right?
Right.
So what's the consequence of devaluing our waste? Let's look at that for a moment. And I'm sorry we're going all over the board here, but I feel like it all kind of
it's all relevant.
Brings us back and reinforces this whole center point that we're talking about in the being a heartist. Yeah. So in the devaluing of our waste, what's the consequence of that? Well, we flush most of our sewage out into the ocean untreated. You can look this up. I think it's like 80 or 90% of our actual sewage goes untreated out into the ocean. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you noticed this, but I think it might have even been more than 10 years ago. There was big articles coming through in like the Times that were talking about this kind of pandemic around the world of these things called red tides. Have you heard of that?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. And do you know what these red tides are or what they represent?
No. Is that waste?
No, it's kind of a byproduct, is what we discover in this article, is that red tides are kind of like this primitive algae. It's red algae that is one of the most primitive life forms on the planet, and what it does is it's toxic to almost all other forms of life. And what it does is, when these red tides wash up on the shore, it actually, you'll notice tons of fish and everything washes up on the shore dead. Which is kind of funny, right? This red tide, and it's like almost like, when I hear that word, I think blood. And then in that, we see all of this dead life, washing up onto the shore at the same time. And then in alignment with that, you also have people who are breathing in that red tide, mist or whatever, having all sorts of health issues.
Wow.
Yeah. And like they're, issues on their nervous system, issues on all sorts of shit.
Right.
And that's all a byproduct of our sewage being flushed out into the ocean, which is creating a nitrogen imbalance, because all of that waste is nitrogen that, instead of going back into the soil, where we get our food from primarily, it's going out into the ocean. Right?
Yeah. Interesting.
Creating kind of an imbalance in terms of, like, most of our food comes from, the earth and, being on land, but we're pushing it all out into the ocean, the byproduct of it.
Right.
Because of our kind of fear or devaluation of our waste.
Right.
Which then, one of the other consequences of that is all of the minerals, the nitrogen and the nutrients that we pull out of the earth in our agriculture, we're not putting back into the earth.
Right.
So you find that a lot of, the issue with our foods is, instead of remineralizing and renutrifying the soil with the nitrogen and all the minerals from the foods that we ate, we're putting it all out into the ocean. And then a lot of these foods then are devalued in terms of their nutrient content.
Right.
And their nitrogen content.
Right.
It's crazy, right?
It is.
And then you look at...
It's a great example.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying that's a great example of us having shame around something or judging something as quote unquote bad. That is actually, a very important part of the entire equation. And that's just something that
us.
Yep. Right.
Yeah. Just doing that has a cost or a consequence. And, then we see, and let's just look at one other big one. And, you could go on and on with this once you start to.
Yeah. We're getting down to it. So maybe give us another example and we'll wrap up here.
Yeah. So when you start to pull on that thread, you start to see that thread is connected to everything else. Right. And then the whole tapestry of our life, begins to unravel, as we see, so here's another waste consequence. Well, look at all the trash we create. Right. And we put that trash now, or waste, into landfills, which then creates toxicity in our soils. Right.
Right.
And then we're filling up these landfills and dumps with all of this stuff. And then that having a consequence on the soil, on the bio, mass around those dumps as well.
Right.
And then we see that we're also, creating these like drains on our resources. And so it's just like whatever we devalue actually has the consequence of devaluing life of which we are a part. And then we devalue our own experience. Is that making sense?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I love that. And it really comes back to, judging, right? And this whole idea that what you judge is, if you're judging anything, it's just showing a lack of understanding of the broader perspective. And,
and essentially you're judging yourself.
Judgments are confessions of character. And
because if I look at you as separate from me, sorry, Brandon, go ahead. Please
no, absolutely. I just wanted to say judgments are a confession of character. And when you realize your level of judgment is equal to your level of, equates to the level of ignorance that is pervading you, it really slows you down and helps you to step back. And it doesn't mean you can't judge something from the perspective of, okay, that's blue and that's red, for example, a non-emotional type of judgment, or this is an experience I don't want to have. I'm not saying that, but like, oh, I'm judging that this is it's very hot here and I want to cool off and I'm going to go inside, or I'm judging that this music is not my preference, so I'm going to go, in the other room and listen to something more chill. It's when you have an emotional attachment to that realization, when you're like judging it in a way that you're defining it or minimizing it and not accepting that it's a part of the entire picture. That's when you're really out of alignment and not in your heart.
Right. Yeah. And I think, even just, I want to like bring this back to like even more elegant simplicity. It's like, we're in always full alignment and agreement on everything. And I feel like when we get into the more complex aspects of this, it makes it easy for people to kind of argue. Mm-hmm. Or say, oh, I don't agree with that. Well, you can always bring it back to something that you can agree with, which is whatever judgments or ideas you have around something will influence your experience of that thing, which will then influence your way of interacting with and dealing with that thing, which then influences that thing's experience of you.
Right. It's a feedback loop.
And that's all it is. The entire thing is a fucking revolution of the mind.
Yeah.
I think I'm pulling that from Vanilla Sky.
I love that movie. One of my favorites. Yeah. It's a revolution of the mind.
Of the mind, in which you see that your mind really is the place where you focus your attention, which really then just creates a point in abstract time and space of focus, that then all of the energy and life that we are begins to flow to. Almost like I put my laser pointer on something, right? And imagine everything around us now begins to flow through to where that laser pointer is.
Right.
Is that visual coming through?
Yeah, totally. You know what's popping up for me right now is like, it's all clay and mirrors around here. It truly is like lumps of clay and mirrors, like everywhere.
I've never heard that before. I thought you were going to say smoke and mirrors.
I just made it up. That's why you never heard it, because that's just like, it's like all clay and it's all mirrors. It's all clay and it's all mirrors, right?
Nice.
So,
I like
man.
That.
Well, Chris, is there anything you want to?
Artist.
Yeah. Why don't you bring it home here as we wind down?
Okay.
And
when we focus our attention, on a truth that is in greatest service to all, right? Like the heart, and we become heartists. What does that mean? Well, being a heartist and being aligned with the heart means that you are in service to everything. You're in service to all of life, rather than in being high-minded or, physically, controlled.
Right. You're proactive instead of reactive, and you're proactive from a position of coming from love,
making choices that serve everything. It even goes, I think love is a great word, but it's still, it just has so many
acceptance,
subjective attachments,
non-judgment. Yeah.
Right. And even non-judgment is speaking to the negative of something, and rather than just saying, well, yeah, this goes beyond
Acceptance.
judgment. It's actually, and yes, and it even goes beyond that, right? Because it goes beyond acceptance to
Beingness.
actually purely loving everything, being one with everything. And when we get that and we become one with everything, then we stop having fear or throwing any parts of ourself away or anything outside of us away. We no longer devalue anything. In fact, we
integrate
value everything. Yes.
And what does Source do? What does Higher Self do? It integrates everything because it is everything. So on our journey back to oneness that we are on is doing that, right? I always say it's like this whole game is like allowing, our expanded self to become and integrate, into this physical form. And that's as you're calling in your divine self. And what does it do? It absorbs everything. It makes room for everything.
And that was one of the recent downloads for me also, Brandon. It's perfect that you actually mentioned it now. Is like when people ask me, like, what are you? Life coach. A Heartist or artist. This. I think to really bring everything back into this whole like wonderfulness. Like now I'm realizing that what I am beyond all of that is an integrationist. By being wonderfulness, it means that I'm an integrationist. I'm constantly integrating everything. Being service to everything.
Love that.
And so, radical integration.
Yeah. That's a beautiful place to leave it, Chris. Thank you for being Heartist and integrationist that you are. You are truly an inspiration. And with that being said, I do have a track to leave all you lovely listeners with. You already know it's the human experience today. And this song is called Unharnessed, featuring Leah Song of Rising Appalachia, who's beautiful, beautiful as well. Hope you enjoyed as much as I do. Thanks again, Chris. Love you, my friend.
Love you. Love you guys. Thank you. Stay positive.
Journey well, everyone. Also, if you're craving more consciousness elevating content, be sure to check out Gaia, which is my personal go-to source for streaming consciousness content on the web, where you can stream an incredible 7,000 plus exclusive videos covering 5,000 years of wisdom. As you all hear me constantly say, it's a daily conscious effort to maintain an elevated vibration. And if you're looking to journey deep down the rabbit hole to do so, then Gaia is the best place I know of to do it, period. And you can sign up for your first month for only 99 cents at gaia.com/positivehead. That's spelled GAIA.com/positivehead. Check it out.
slow things. Bring me your amber and the shelter of your young wings.